Yo, what's up everybody? Today we're going to do the first item set. We're going to be doing Riven. We're going to be talking about all the item possibilities for Riven. So we're going to be covering starting items, your core mythics, first items, and then your later game options. And then in the end we'll also be covering the runes. So starting off for Riven right now, there are two starting item options. So let's drag Riven right here. We choose a Riven. And drop items. So first starting items we have is a longsword. Longsword is by far the best starting item currently for Riven. Riven as a champion has no built-in sustain, right? No sustain from anything in her passive or any other like ability that gives her sustain. So what I like to do when I'm playing Riven right now is play super aggressive in the early game because she has one of the strongest early game starts. And because of this, I like to play this champion very aggressive. And the reason I go longsword 3 potions very often is, let's say I play against a common matchup like Fiora, and she goes Dorn's Blade start, and she has 1 potion, right? And I have longsword with 3 potions. I'll just try to trade with her level 1, and let's say I take 50% of her HP and I lose 50% of my HP. It's worth, because I have 3 potions and she has 1 potion, right? And then the other starting option would be a Dorn Shield. Now, me personally, I'm not the biggest fan of this start. I only take it into certain like range champions, right? It's good into matchups like, let's say, Gragas. There's some melee matches I take it into as well. It's Gragas. I think it's good into Gragas because he will run out of mana faster than I run out of HP. And then the other option would be against all the range champions like the Jace, the Vladimir, Cannon, right? These champions you should be running D-Shoot into to just sustain yourself, because again, Riven has no sustain in her kit, so these are your only 2 item starts. Now, one thing that I have to quickly mention is Dorn's Blade. I don't like it as a starting item, again, because there's no sustain, but what I do very often on Riven is I'll do my Longsword or D-Shoot start. If I go D-Shoot, I don't need the second Dorns, but if I go Longsword start, right, I'll get a D-Blade on my first recall for 90% of the time. So it's not the starting item, but it will be my first recall. So starting item, there we go. Right, starting item for me is this, into pretty much every champion, and I go D-Shoot into Gragas and pretty much every range champion. Now, for first item, right here, the best rushable item right now for Riven is a Hydra. The reason I like Hydra so much is because it gives Riven a lot of damage, right? It allows you to one-shot people, it gives 25 ability haste, and with a lot of items being removed with ability haste, this item is very, very nice. It gives 65 AD damage, and then you can also get 20 extra AD from stacking your passive, or stacking the passive, right? So in total, I think you can get 85 AD. I'm not 100% exact on the number, however, again, you get a lot of AD. You get AoE damage, it allows you to one-shot waves, it allows you to one-shot drone camps, and on top of that, you're also able to kill your opponents and sustain. So this is the best current starting item for Riven. I rush it pretty much 100% of my games right now. Now, after, and this is where it becomes a bit trickier, is we have 2 options. We either go for Eclipse, and this is the best mythic right now. So this is our starting item, right? This is our first item. Now, our second item in the game, it is either Eclipse or Cleaver, and I'll explain the difference. So the most important thing to consider here is that both are equally good. Cleaver is almost mythic tier, honestly. This item is very overtuned. If for 3100 gold you get 50 attack damage, which is a lot. You get 400 HP and 30 ability haste, and then you also get the armor shred passive, right? And the armor shred passive also stacks together with like Hydra. Like when you hit a minion, for example with Hydra, it can also cleave the Black Cleaver onto your opponent, and it sticks for 6 seconds. So it's super like tricky for your opponent to deal with you once you have these 2 items together. Same with Eclipse. The reason why Eclipse is much better than Gore Drinker right now or any other mythic on Riven is because it provides a lot of damage. It also gives you ability haste now, and this is the most important part, it gives armor penetration. Armor penetration is a super valuable stat, simply because after durability changes, right, every champion almost in the game in top lane that is good right now either has true damage, percentage health damage, or on-hit damage, either through items or in their kit. So for example, Darius has true damage with his passive, but Aurelia and Jax get a percentage health damage through Divine or Blade of the Throne King, right? Riven has none of that. Riven only has armor penetration. So because Riven has no true damage, no on-hit damage, she needs the the armor penetration from our items, and that's why we go both of these items, but the order is dependent on what matchup we play and also how the game is evolving. So let's say we're playing into a Gragas, right? Very often we could be getting one-shot by the Gragas, especially if we're playing with base HP by only having a Hydra. Maybe you have an extra Doran's Blade here, right? Like I discussed, because I very often get a Doran's Blade, right? But let's say we only have a Hydra, and we go for Eclipse after, we're actually still playing with our base HP, which makes us super vulnerable, and because of that, I will be going for a Cleaver, right? And then I literally go Hydra into Cleaver, so I buy 2 items without my Mythic, and then I go Eclipse third, which is what I mostly do right now. Let's say I feel confident that I can just keep snowballing and I will not get one-shot by champions on the map, so let's say I'm playing against a J-Stop, for example, the other day. I was pretty far ahead, and I was able to get my Mythic second very fast, and the J simply couldn't play anymore, right? So decide this on the outcome, like depending on the game state, and let's say you feel like you need a lot of HP, go for Cleaver, or if you're playing against a certain like super big tank, right, you probably also need the Cleaver, and if you're playing against squishies and you feel like you can take it, then go Eclipse second instead. However, like I said, if we go Cleaver second, I go Eclipse third, and if I go Eclipse second, I very often will take Eclipse, if I go Eclipse second, I will very often go Cleaver third. So this is our second and third item. Now for last items, there's a lot of options. The one that I like the most right now is Guardian Angel. I think this is one of the best items to build in general, since we're so, like this setup is super aggressive, right? So since we're super aggressive, for my fourth item, I like to take something a bit more defensive. Some other options we have are Maul, right? Maul is super good, especially into heavy burst mages, some AP assassins like Silas and Akali. Maul is just a perfect option, anything like that. Now, sometimes you would have the option to also go Maul third, right? But in the general sense, this item usually comes fourth for me, and same for the Guardian Angel. One thing to quickly mention as well is very often I will buy a stopwatch maybe a bit earlier on, because a stopwatch is like a budget Guardian Angel, right? I just call it a budget Guardian Angel. It still allows you, if you time it well, to completely either win or lose a team fight, because you can just dish out all your damage, go into a stopwatch in the backline, right? And then come out of the stopwatch and clean up the team fight, something like that. Other options we have for a fourth item could be Soreljas. And let's say you play against a super tank or very tanky players, or you would need this item to stick to people. I've had games where I go Hydra, Cleaver, Eclipse, and then even Soreljas, and I one-shot anything that is on the map. So if you want to really one-shot people, we go Soreljas fourth. Yeah, what are some other options? These are usually the best option I go for right now. Some other options we could be considering is a Death Stance, right? I like Death Stance into 80 heavy comps without true damage. If you're not familiar with how the Death Stance passive work, is you basically take 60% of the damage, or 70% of the damage you take instantly, and 30% of the damage you take over time. But you are able to shield or heal the damage that you take over time. So that's like the nice thing, right? However, true damage ignores that passive. So we only built this item against comp that have little to no true damage, right? So let's say we're playing against the Camille, Death Stance is not good. Let's say we play against Aatrox, Death Stance is very good. Some other items that could be worth considering is Spear of Sojin. I built this whenever I feel like I don't need Cleaver for the armor penetration, and I can just take this for the movement speed and the ability haste. Sometimes, it rarely happens, so I rarely buy this item, but sometimes it can be okay. Are there any items we're missing? Let's say you're super playing against super squishy comps. What I'll sometimes do is either go this, or I'll take this, right? Because it's more lethality, allowing you to one-shot targets even faster. This is super greedy though if you're taking this, right, as your last items. However, if you're playing against super squishy comps, this can work. So these items can be very valuable. So yeah, we'll call this finishing up the build, right? And what else? Do we miss any items? I think we've pretty much covered every single item that could be viable for Riven. I don't think there's any left. No. Perfect. Now, one more thing we need to talk about is boots, right? There's, I guess, this is my core boots, right? Let's put it up here, actually. Let's drag it up onto here. Can we put it up right here? And then right here. Let's put it before our first item, so it's a bit more overseeable for everybody. We're talking about boots. We can have steel, I call them Tabi still, that's my bad. We can steel plate caps, or we can have Merc. So let's discuss the differences and when I get which. So, Lucidity boots is the best boot. It allows you to snowball, it gives you 20% ability haste, which is insane, and it also gives you 12 summoner spell haste, which is even better, right? Because let's say you're snowballing and you get your flash 12, you have 12 summoner haste on your summoners as well. you will have your flash up more often than your opponent, allowing you to get more kill windows and snowball faster, right? The 20 ability haste is what really makes or breaks it, though. It's super oppressive, right? CDR is probably the most important stat for Riven. Ability haste, sorry, not CDR, ability haste. And because of that, Lucidity Boots is the boots I take, let's say, 90% of my games. Now, against true damage comps, right, like I mentioned, you do not want to go Death Stance. So Death Stance, when Death Stance is not an option anymore, I like to go for Tabis instead, because that is like my most accessible armor item option paired with the Guardian Angel, right? So let's say I'm playing against the Fiora or Camille or a Vayne, these kind of true damage heavy champions, and I want some armor, then I'll be opting for Steel Plated Cap simply because Death Sense is not viable because of the true damage. Mercs is when I'm versing either very heavy AP topside, so let's say I'm playing against a Gragas, an Evelynn, and a Victor, right? Then Mercs are just super valuable, you should 100% of the times get it. Or I'm building this whenever I'm playing against comps with layers of untouchable CC. So let's say I'm playing against a Gragas, and then maybe a Galio mid, and then they also have something with CC in the jungle and something with CC in the support role, right? So when they have layers of untouchable CC, I'll be going for Mercs. So a full build, very often we go Longsword, to just summarize it, right? Longsword in most of our matchups, D-Shield in ranged matchups, and Gragas, right? CDR boots, 90% of the games, Tabis against comps with true damage, and Mercs is just super good when you're versing AP heavy topsides, or comps with layers of untouchable CC. Hydra is your best first starting item, I take it 100% of my games right now. Then we either go Cleaver or Eclipse second, depending on the game, depending on the comp, depending on our matchup, right? And then you can finish up the build with whatever you need. Again, learning how to itemize is one of the most important things, but I hope this guide will allow you guys to choose more proficiently and choose depending on the game. So, there's that. Press save. And yeah, so finishing up the build here. Second, third item, first item, our new, we call this boots. There we go. There's our boots. Now it's safe. Alright, let's quickly cover runes as well, because this is of course super important as well. Without runes, we do not have our setup complete. So, talking about runes for Riven, there are 3 runes options, and I'll cover the one that I like the most. It's the most aggressive, which is how I like to play Riven. And I go for Conqueror every game. Then we go for Triumph every game. We get Tenacity when we are playing against untouchable CC, and we take Alacrity whenever we're not facing with a lot of CC. I like Alacrity because it makes your fast combo more fluent. However, let's say we're playing against a lot of CC, we just need Tenacity, and I go less than 100% of my games. The only thing that really changed is very often this. I like Sorcery because it gives Transcendence and it gives me Ability Haste, which I mentioned earlier. That is like one of the most broken settings to have, right? So I really like going Transcendence. And then I also go Nimbus Cloak because it allows me to get movement speed on every summoner I cast. So let's say I press Ignite on somebody from a range distance. I get a burst movement speed and I can gap close with them, already dealing damage with my Ignite, and then I do not have to use my ability to gap close, allowing me to kill my opponents much faster, honestly. So I really like the setup. I run this right now pretty much 100% of my games. This is the setup I love the most, but there are some other ones. One thing to quickly mention, double Adaptive into most of your matchups, Ability Haste into ranged matchups, so you can get your abilities up more often, use your E more to deny poke, right? And get your abilities up more often to stick with them or to get close onto them. The other rune options you have for aggression is Sudden Impact and either Relentless Hunter or a Genius Hunter or even Ultimate Hunter. It's mostly the Sudden Impact, right, on this aggressive build because it gives you some more, what's it called? You get like a burst of lethality, right, which allows you to do just so much more damage, and it really stacks together with the build that we're going. I don't like using the setup too much. It's super aggressive, and I feel like this is super valuable, but all these other trees are not that valuable. I personally would go with Ingenious Hunter because it would lower your Eclipse shield, it would lower your Maul shield, it would lower your Guardian Angel duration. However, me personally, I like this one the most. And in the matchups that you're struggling a lot, let's say a ranged champion, right? Let's say a cannon, you can go for this to sustain some more poke with the second wind. And alternatively, let's say you're playing against a set and you really struggle with the matchup, you can go for this, get the bone plating, get this, or maybe even shield bash if you don't need the nasty, so that we can sustain against the harder matchups as well, right? Like this. So, that's runes covered, that's item covered, that's the build guide for Riven. Good luck in your game, guys. That's it for me. Peace.